Every time I see a new Wes Anderson movie come out, I look at the poster and just see the smorgasbord of famous people that are in this movie. And at least for the poster for this movie, you see all their names listed on there. And before this came out, we were going to the theater, and my dad saw a poster for it, and he just kept looking at all the names, going, "Oh my God, there are so many people in this!" And just yeah, that's what happens when Wes Anderson makes a movie. A lot of people get in on that. And I think that's pretty cool that a director like that has this kind of power, even if like no matter how you feel about him, it's pretty impressive that he can get this much talent into a movie. So either way, I guess there's not really a joke in there. I just think that's an interesting observation. So either way, I watched Asteroid City today. When it comes to Wes Anderson movies in general, I haven't seen all of them. I should note that I've seen a bit of a handful. I should probably pull that up. Actually, what I've seen in order, I have seen Rushmore, Fantastic Mr. Fox, The Grand Budapest Hotel, The French Dispatch, and now Asteroid City. There, that huge stretch in the middle, and also Battle Rocket, his first movie. I have not seen any of those, and honestly, I am going to watch those. Just to say, like, I've seen all these movies and I know what I'm working with because I've got some pretty big criticisms of this one. But either way, out of the five I've just mentioned, it's a bit of a hot take, I know, to say this, but out of those five movies I mentioned, The French Dispatch was the one that landed the hardest and most with me. That's my favorite one out of all the movies I've seen. I feel like it just nailed the style of what he was going for. It had enough creativity in there and a different enough structure, I would say as well, that just really hit home for me. It's not to say that the other movies I've seen are bad because they're very much not. There's a reason why so many actors go to flock to Wes Anderson whenever he makes a movie. He knows what he's doing. He is a master at work when it comes to directing, especially a visual style. You will never see me, no matter how good or bad a movie is from a story perspective, you will never see me knock anything when it comes to Wes Anderson's visual style and cinematography, the production design especially, and just knowing that, like, whether you like it or not, Wes Anderson has a handle on what his style is, and he is trying to get everything out of it. So now getting into Asteroid City itself, this movie is set in the small town of Asteroid City. It's a fictional town in a desert in 1955, and there's this space cadet convention, or Junior Stargazer as they call it, and it's all these families coming in to hold like little futuristic science experiments. It's set in the 50s, so it's a retro futuristic thing, and it's a more with a sci-fi angle. And this convention is disrupted by, without getting into spoilers, because even if you watch the trailer, there are spoilers for this, which I will not talk about in this video. This convention is interrupted by something big. I'll leave it at that. I think Wes Anderson tackling sci-fi, or at least like low fantasy or low sci-fi, is a very interesting turn to do. I was very excited to see what this movie could be, and boy, there's I don't know about this one. I've even noticed when it comes to hardcore Wes Anderson fans, this is pretty divisive. This is like it's leaning positive, negative in every direction when it comes to how people feel about this. And unfortunately, I am leaning a little negative on this. I thought this was a pretty big disappointment. But either way, I'm going to start off with the good stuff because, you know, yeah, everything visual, as I said earlier, is fantastic. The cinematography, the production design, even the costumes, it is just really well done. And I won't be surprised if this ends up getting like a bunch of Oscar nominations in the technical field, but you never know. I also really like the music in this when it comes to both Alexandre Desplat's score, which I think might honestly be my favorite part of this whole movie. I love the little xylophone jingle that plays throughout this movie. It's been stuck in my head for ever since I saw it. I also really like the soundtrack choices as well, since this is like set in the mid 50s. There's a Bing Crosby song, there's Burl Ives, and it's all Western feeling because this is set in a desert in America. And I feel like that's a really cool stylistic choice. Honestly, a lot of the stylistic choice when it comes to visuals and the technical aspects, I think are pretty spectacular. But where the problems start to come in, sparking down there. All the problems that I'm getting from this is just purely from the story, the writing, and what's the most shocking to me, the acting. Before I actually get to that, I decided to bump this up in my notes because this is lower down in my notes. But I want to talk about different elements of a director, especially with one that has so much style and is known for this as Wes Anderson. You've seen those AI YouTube videos that are really shitty of like, oh, Star Wars was directed by Wes Anderson. You know, all that, because it's the only kind of style that AI can copy, and even that, it still doesn't do it well. There are a couple different things in here that I think are very good when separated, especially like in concept. I think, I should also say, I have not seen every Wes Anderson movie, I'm going to say that again, but I think something dealing with themes of grief and isolation, especially after a pandemic that we were just in, along with in a sci-fi setting, is interesting. It might have been done before, but I still think it's an interesting idea. There's also Wes Anderson's very signature, like, deadpan delivery of dialogue that's very wordy. And again, that has worked in a good amount of his movies. I think it worked really well in The French Dispatch, since that had much more of a newspaper-esque, like, a newspaper, because that's what The French Dispatch is. It had a much more journalistic angle, so I liked it in that context. In this movie, there is also a bit of a meta-narrative and like commentary on other things, which I will not get into because that is the spoiler part. And honestly, on paper, that also worked too. And just all these other elements that I mentioned, or the three things I mentioned, work really well together on paper. But combined, in this movie, it felt shockingly sloppy. Even for Wes Anderson, this was shocking how much he fumbled this. I'm not going to get into the meta commentary part because that's like the spoiler aspect of it, and this is a spoiler-free video. But I want to focus on combining the themes of grief and isolation and really digging deep into who we are as human beings, especially in a sci-fi concept, along with Wes Anderson's deadpan delivery. This did not work. This just did not work at all, especially with, you have a great amount of talented actors here. I think it's great that Jason Schwartzman is the best performer in this. I think he has the most to do, same with Scarlett Johansson, and everything with Jason Schwartzman and his family is really interesting on paper. The delivery of this dialogue and just dealing with grief and loss, but with Jason Schwartzman doing this in this stone-faced dialogue, rambling like a little bit. It's not as stuttery as me, but I think you get the idea. It felt very artificial, and in something that, especially dealing with topics that are very human. Everyone has felt something like this before. Whether it's like losing whether you've lost someone, or just, again, in 2020 when everything was locked down. We were all, at least in America, I'm in America, we were locked down for a little bit. And we had to deal with that isolation, and those were real emotions. It didn't feel real in Asteroid City. That was the thing that like threw me off the most with this movie. And a lot of times it really took me out of it. I mentioned Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson. I also want to shout out Bryan Cranston, who I forgot was in this movie. His part is more in the spoilery aspect, but I think he's one of the funniest parts of this movie, and I'll leave it at that. But even then, when you look at the cast list, you have so many talented people in here. I'm just going to look at the cast list and read down the list. Out of the other three people I mentioned, you have Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Edward Norton, Adrien Brody, Liev Schreiber, Hope Davis, Rupert Friend, Maya Hawke, Steve Carell, Willem Dafoe, Chau, Margot Robbie, and Tony Revolori, and Jeff Goldblum, and Sophia Lillis. All of these really talented actors and actresses. You have them here for what could be like a career-changing movie if it does well. And now just it felt fumbled. And yes, I know that this is a massive cast, but if you're going to see this movie for an actor that isn't Jason Schwartzman or Scarlett Johansson, a lot of them aren't really in this movie. Some of them even have one or two lines. I'm not knocking the movie against that, but you know, if you're seeing this movie for Jeff Goldblum, sorry, he only has like a couple lines. I guess I'll end it there because I don't want to get mad. I get passionate about these. On top of the fact that I guess talking about bad movies or movies that disappointed me is not my favorite thing to do on this channel. There are fireworks going on now. Incredible. I'll end it here. I think Asteroid City was one of the biggest disappointments of the year for me. There was so much working here in its favor, and even for someone as, like, in the film industry as Wes Anderson, it was really shocking to see just how much he fumbled this. And there are great parts of this. I think technical aspects are great. I think Jason Schwartzman is pretty great, but just it doesn't overcome how sloppy this movie feels, and just trying to do everything it can. And I'm just gonna say it. I think Wes Anderson went too far with this. I think he needs to be reined in a little bit because this is getting a little bit out of hand. I'm gonna give Asteroid City a 4 out of 10. Maybe that'll change on a rewatch later down the line, but I just feel like this was just a massive disappointment, and just I was really hoping for something much better. My question for you is, what is your favorite Wes Anderson movie? He's got a pretty big filmography. He's got another movie coming out later this year. I think it's going to be on Netflix, and hopefully that's better than this. But either way, what is your favorite Wes Anderson movie? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. See ya!